To prepare a king for eternity, priests once pulled his brain out through his nose piece by piece with a hook. It wasn't cruelty, it was the most careful act of love in the ancient world. And what happened over the next 70 days was so precise, so strange, and so advanced that some of it still isn't fully explained. Most ancient cultures feared death itself. The Egyptians feared something else. They feared disappearing. To them, your body wasn't something you left behind when you died. It was the one thing your soul needed to survive. Lose the body, and you lose everything. Your memory, your identity, your entire afterlife gone. So they set out to solve a problem no civilization had solved before. How do you stop a human body from decaying using nothing but salt, oil, linen, and centuries of trial and error? Somehow they cracked it. Some mummies over 4,000 years old still have their eyelashes intact. But here's what most people don't know. The process wasn't just about preservation, it was about passing a test. Get even one detail wrong, and Egyptians believed the soul could be lost forever. What was that process, and why does new evidence suggest it was even stranger than we thought? To understand mummification, you first have to understand what Egyptians believed a person actually was. They didn't think you had just one soul. You had several, working together. The ka was a kind of life force that stayed near the body after death. The bay, often pictured as a bird with a human head, could travel freely, but had to return to the body every single night, the way a traveler returns to the same hotel room. If the body was gone, the bay had nowhere to land. It would wander, lost, with no way home, for eternity. That single belief turned mummification from a ritual into something closer to engineering, and it created one of the strangest professions in the ancient world, the embalmer, part priest, part chemist, part surgeon. The story of mummification doesn't start with pharaohs, it starts with an accident. Long before the pyramids existed, early Egyptians simply buried their dead in shallow pits in the desert. No coffins, no chemicals, just sand. And something unexpected happened. The hot, dry sand pulled the moisture out of the bodies so fast that some of them naturally preserved themselves, skin, hair, even fingernails, intact for centuries. Nobody planned that, but somebody noticed it. And that raised a question that would shape Egyptian civilization for the next 3,000 years. If nature could preserve a body by accident, could humans learn to do it on purpose? The early answer was no, not easily. As Egyptians began building coffins and burial chambers to honor their dead, they accidentally created a new problem. Wooden coffins kept bodies away from the drying sand. Without it, the bodies rotted. Fast. So the very act of trying to honor the dead was, ironically, destroying them. Embalmers had to find another way to do what the desert had done for free. And for a long time, they failed. Early experiments used oils and resins painted directly onto skin. They smelled wonderful. They preserved almost nothing. Bodies still decayed underneath the wrappings, hidden from view but not stopped. Then came the breakthrough, a naturally occurring mineral salt called natron, mined from dry lake beds west of the Nile. Natron did something remarkable at a chemical level. It didn't just soak up moisture, it actively starved the bacteria responsible for decay, since those bacteria couldn't survive without water. For the first time, Egyptians weren't just slowing decay down, they were stopping it. Once they understood that, everything changed. Mummification stopped being a guess, it became a formula. By the New Kingdom, around 1550 BCE, that formula had become a strict 70-day process, refined by generations of specialists who treated the human body almost like a scientific problem to be solved. The first step created an immediate dilemma. To dry a body properly, the organs had to come out. Soft internal tissue decays first, and if it was left inside, it would rot the entire body from within, no matter how much natron surrounded it. So embalmers made a small incision along the left side of the abdomen and carefully removed the stomach, liver, lungs, and intestines. Each organ was dried separately in natron, wrapped individually, and placed into containers called canopic jars, each one guarded by a different protective god. But then they reached an organ they refused to touch: the heart. To the Egyptians, the heart wasn't just an organ. It was the seat of memory, emotion, intelligence, and moral character. Everything that made a person who they were lived there, not in the brain. In the afterlife, that heart would face the ultimate test. The god Anubis would place it on one side of a scale, balanced against a single feather representing truth. If a lifetime of wrongdoing made the heart too heavy, the soul would be devoured instantly and cease to exist. If it balanced, the soul would move on to paradise. Removing the heart wasn't just a medical risk, it was unthinkable. Doing so would leave a person with no way to defend their own life, which makes the very next step even stranger. The brain, which modern science now knows controls memory, thought, and identity, meant almost nothing to the Egyptians. They believed it was simply packing material inside the skull, with no real purpose. So, using a long bronze hook, embalmers inserted it through the nostril, broke through the thin bone at the base of the skull, and pulled the brain out in small pieces, sometimes whisking the remaining tissue into liquid to drain it out completely. It sounds violent, but it was remarkably precise. Done correctly, it left the face completely untouched, which mattered enormously, since the face needed to remain recognizable for the BA to find its way home each night. With the organs removed, the empty body was packed and covered inside and out, with natron, then left completely undisturbed for around 40 days. This waiting period was, by far, the most important step in the entire process. Rush it, even by a few days, and the body would begin to rot from the inside before the drying was complete. There were no shortcuts, only patience. After 40 days, something remarkable had happened. The body had lost most of its water weight. It was shrunken, dark, and leathery, almost unrecognizable. But it was stable. It would no longer decay, not in 10 years, not in 1,000. Now came the second half of the process, rebuilding a human being out of what was left. Embalmers packed the hollow body cavity with linen, sawdust, and sometimes fragrant resin, restoring something close to its natural shape. They rubbed the skin with oils and perfumed substances, partly to protect it, and partly out of simple respect. Whoever lay on that table had once been someone's father, mother, or ruler. Even after death, they were treated with care, not just chemistry. Then came the wrapping, a process that alone could take another 15 days. Linen bandages, sometimes hundreds of yards of it, were wound around the body layer after layer. Between those layers, priests tucked in protective amulets, small carved charms meant to guard specific parts of the body in the next life. A scarab beetle amulet was often placed directly over the heart, meant to keep it calm and honest when its moment of judgment finally arrived. Throughout the wrapping, priests recited spells aloud, line by line, turning what looks to modern eyes like a medical procedure into something closer to a sacred performance, part surgery, part funeral, part prayer. By the time it was finished, the person inside was completely unrecognizable as a human body. They now looked like something else entirely. A monument. A statue built from linen, oil, and belief, ready to last forever. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. For a long time, historians assumed mummification was essentially a fixed ritual, the same process repeated identically for thousands of years, out of pure tradition. Modern chemistry says otherwise. Researchers analyzing the exact resins used inside different mummies have found something surprising. The formulas kept changing, over more than 1,000 years, almost like an ongoing product being improved with every generation. Early mummies show simple, locally available materials, but later mummies contain resins that appear to have been imported from remarkably far away, possibly from forests in Southeast Asia, transported along ancient trade routes specifically because they preserved tissue more effectively than anything found in Egypt. In other words, embalmers weren't just repeating a sacred formula handed down unchanged. They were running something closer to long-term research and development, testing, comparing, and importing new materials purely because the results were measurably better. That alone would be surprising enough. But there's a second twist, one that changes how we should think about mummification altogether. Not every mummy found in Egypt is actually what it claims to be. Millions of animal mummies, cats, birds, even crocodiles were produced in ancient Egypt, sold to pilgrims as offerings to the gods. For a long time, scholars assumed each one contained exactly what its wrapping suggested. But modern CT scanning has revealed something unsettling. When researchers scanned large collections of these animal mummies without unwrapping them, a significant percentage contained no complete animal at all. Some held only bones, feathers, or scraps of material never even attached to the animal in question. Some contained nothing but mud sticks and shaped linen. It appears that, alongside the extraordinary science of preserving royalty, an entire industry may have existed producing convincing fakes for ordinary buyers, people who couldn't tell the difference, and who likely never opened the wrapping to check. Mummification wasn't only sacred science. In some cases, it may have also been ancient Egypt's version of counterfeit goods. So how did the ancient Egyptians actually prepare a body for the afterlife? They removed the organs most likely to decay, carefully preserved the heart as the seat of memory and judgment, dried the entire body using natron salt for 40 days, restored its shape with packing and oil, and wrapped it in layer after layer of linen, protected by charms, prayers, and centuries of refined technique. Every single step served two purposes at once: a physical one, halting decay through genuine, evolving chemical understanding, and a spiritual one, preparing a home the soul could return to, night after night, forever. It wasn't magic, and in many cases, it wasn't even fixed tradition. It was a 70-day process of careful science, constantly improved, wrapped tightly in belief. And that's why, thousands of years later, we can still look directly at the face of a king who ruled before the pyramids of Giza were even built. Not a painting, not a carving. His actual face, preserved by people who had no microscope, no thermometer, and no word for bacteria, yet somehow got the chemistry right. But their success raises one more question, stranger than anything inside the embalming room. If the Egyptians truly believed eternity depended on a body staying completely intact, undisturbed, and protected forever, why did they also design their tombs full of traps, false doors, and hidden chambers built specifically to fool the very people who might one day come looking? That question leads somewhere even deeper than the mummy itself. If you enjoy exploring the biggest questions about history, science, and our world, subscribe to this channel for more documentaries.